trial of the prosecutor versus Dominic Ongwen continued from 30th April to 14th of June 2019 at the International Criminal Court in The Hague. During this time, 9 witnesses were called by the Ongwen Defence team to give their testimony before the chamber about the Lord's Resistance Army, Joseph Kony, Dominic Ongwen, IDP camps, and the history of the political situation in Northern Uganda. Dominic Ongwen, the alleged former commander of the senior brigade of the LRA, is accused of 70 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity allegedly committed during a widespread and systematic attack directed against the civilian population of Northern Uganda from at least 1st July 2002 to 31st December 2005, including the attacks against the civilian population in Lokodi, Pajule, Odek, and Abok IDP camps between October 2003 and June 2004. 3 witnesses, witness D26P0076, D26P0081, and D26P0066, testified about their experiences living in Pajule and Odek IDP camps. Witness D26P0076 testified about the LRA attack on Pajule IDP camp on 10th October 2003. That night was Independence Day of Uganda. People were celebrating from the 9th through to the 10th. On that night, people were in a celebratory mood, people were drunk, and so a number of them were caught unaware by the attack. During the night, when I was asleep, towards the dawn of that night, that's when I heard gunshots on the road from Pajule Center towards Lachani at a stream called Awatmon. There was a lot of noise and shouting, and immediately I realized that this could be the LRA soldiers attacking. So I woke up, ran out of, with the intention of running out of my house, but my wife held me back that I shouldn't go out because I would be hit by the bullets. I told her, no, let me run, because if I stay in this house, the rebels will come and they would abduct me. My wife did not let me go. She held me tightly, fearing that if I ran out, I would be hit by the bullets. Shortly, in that instance, I heard when our door was opened. I was captured and brought out, and I was tied in the waist with a rope, and we started moving, going forward. Right from that time, at that instance, there was gunshots going on and exchange of fire between the soldiers protecting the camp and the rebels. We moved and stood somewhere amongst the houses that were in the camp. The gunshots was intense. The exchange of fire was fierce between the government soldiers and the LRA soldiers. As we would move, they would exchange fire, and then at some point when the gunshot ceased, they would tell us to continue. But if they want to exchange fire, they would tell people to stop, and then they would exchange fire and then continue moving. Some people were made to carry luggage, and then as we left the camp, the government soldiers started following us, and we continued our movement and went to a place called Lilla. Witness D26P0076, who was abducted during the Pajule IDP camp attack, said that while he spent nearly a week in the bush before he escaped, he didn't hear Dominic Ongwen's name being mentioned. Only after he returned from the bush did he hear the accused name. He further explained that he didn't know the LRA commanders, and even if they were there with him, he wouldn't have identified them. Witness D26P0081, who also lived in Pajuli IDP camp before getting abducted by the LRA into the bush during the attack, testified about his interactions with the accused.
From my observation, newly abducted people would be mishandled by the lower rank soldiers who were under the command of the commanders such as Laponyo Domi. But the commanders such as Laponyo Domi would talk to people well. They would teach people, tell them, assure them to stay without fear. One day when we were moving and we were crossing a main road with them, I was carrying a jerrycan, and the jerrycan overturned. Someone who was one of the foot soldiers knocked my lips with the butt of the gun, and my lips cracked. I did not know that Laponyo Domi had seen. He had seen what happened. When we settled down where we had reached, the person was summoned, and he gave a strong warning to that person that what you're doing was bad. Someone who has been abducted escaped because of what you are doing. You are mistreating this person. This person is older than you in age. You should respect him as someone who is your elder. Now you have beaten this person and you have injured the person. That is not good. I am giving you the last warning, and should you do it again, I'll give you a very severe punishment. When he gave a warning to that person for mistreating me, I saw that he was someone who did not encourage mistreatment. That is what I saw.
Two other witnesses, D26P0117 and D26P0118, also vividly testified about their abduction by the LRA, rules in the LRA, being distributed as wives, and their interactions with the accused. Both witnesses said that during their interaction with the accused, he was a nice and kind person. About being distributed as a wife in the LRA, witness D26P0118 testified about her ordeal.
Upon my abduction,
please don't mention names.
No, I will not mention any name. Upon my abduction, we met at the RV, and everybody was there at the RV. And we were told that those newly abducted people who abducted girls should submit them to the central point. We were only two who were submitted to the overall commander in that group. For us, we were abducted by the group belonging to Sick Bay. We were taken to Kony's home, and he told people to distribute us, and then we were distributed. For me, I was taken to a different household, and then my other friend was taken to another household.
Whom did Kony tell to distribute you? If it is not the person you have been distributed to, it's a little bit difficult.
Hello.
When we were taken there, they just sent an escort of the person to whom I was distributed to come and pick me. He was also sitting there. I don't know who controlled to distribute me.
Thank you. But the decision made Kony.
Yes.
How old were you at the time?
I was 13 years and a half.
A similar question to one that I have already put to you, although it's a long time ago. Could you describe your feelings at the time when you have been distributed to a man at the age of 13?
I was not happy, I was not free.
How did the person that you had been distributed to, how did he treat you?
I cannot answer that question.
Another witness who testified during this evidentiary block was Mr. Joseph Bua Okol, a Lango cultural and traditional leader, testified about his leadership in the Lango region, the LRA and its attack in the region, IDP camps formation, and LDU groups in the region.
When were these camps established in Lango?
In Lango, well, the camps were set up at different times, depending on the insecurity in that area. Let's say, starting from Lakwena. When Lakwena came, there are some people who could not live in their areas, so they had to move to the camps. If people would stay in the camps, and it would be easier to protect people. So from the 90s, let's say from 1999 till the 2000s, there were several camps sprouting up in different places. Initially, there were camps for cattle rustlers. During that period, well, people also went to camps, and that was during Obote's government, not the current government. So camps were something that people in Northern Uganda were used to. So each government would come with its own issues, send people to the camps. For example, as a leader in a particular area where there are problems, then I would also make sure that their people are secure. So people were sent to camps whenever there was any kind of insecurity. But for these current camps, there were two. In 2002 to 2006, that is when the camps were established, and that is when they allowed us to recruit our children, the Amuka. We had an agreement with the government that the government, the Amukas would be responsible for protecting people in the camps, but they would not be responsible for fighting the LRA, and the government accepted this.
Regarding young children who are abducted in the bush, Mr. Okol expressed his sadness on how hard it was to rehabilitate these children because of mental problems, but cultural leaders are trying to change the situation. Another witness testifying about the Lango region was humanitarian Mr. Utao Isha. He spoke about Ugandan political history, how the various conflicts and rebellions occurred in Uganda, and how those events brought about the rise of IDP camps. Mr. Isha noted that when the LRA group attacked the Lango region, there was no clear guidance from the government of Uganda on how to handle the LRA situation, and so because of constant attacks, many civilians were displaced from their homes, and as a result, they went to live in IDP camps. As a humanitarian officer, the witness saw firsthand how the civilians lived in IDP camps.
So the human condition, first of all, the housing wasn't there. What was there, I don't know how to call it, how to define it, because it was deplorably bad and the people were too many. I remember in one of the camps there were 30,000 people called Aloy IDP camp, which is in one small location. So it was so bad in terms of housing. In terms of feeding, there were no foods. Remember, people were being forced out to leave their home and come in the camp without carrying things or food. Remember, there were no distribution of food by government. There were also at the beginning, there was nothing from NGOs until when some of us came in, and with very few NGOs actually in Lango region, very few NGOs went there because of restriction and little knowledge about the situation there. So there was a lot of malnutrition in the camps. I remember one day when I traveled to Omoro IDP camp, about 80 kilometers away from Lira town, and I'd gone to do survey for drilling some water points in that camp. We came across 6 babies that were badly malnourished. And my duty would not allow me then to transport them from where they are to a feeding center, a therapeutic feeding center, which was in Lira town, manned by Medicines Sans Frontiers, another sister organization. But because they were looking so bad, human lives looking like, I don't know how to describe anyway, I took a risk to lose the job, but basically to transport them to the therapeutic feeding center. As I moved back towards Lira town, the first 4 people, I think first 2 died when I just moved about 40 kilometers in the vehicle. When I was approaching town, about 2 kilometers to Lira town, 2 also passed on in my vehicle. Now, as I was entering the gate, we were now calling the medical officers to come and pick these ones. The other 2 also passed on. So we ended up bringing the dead bodies from human life, and we deposited dead bodies at the therapeutic feeding center. And that kind of occurrence was a daily occurrence in the camps. Children, babies, the elderly, the disabled would die like one-day-old chick. Actually, one time I said it, like one-day-old chick, when they are not being protected, just normal death, just die. So in terms of feeding, there was a lot of problem which caused a lot of malnutrition, and many children and elderly died as a result of that.
When asked about how the IDP camps were disbanded, Mr. Isha complained about the lack of structure in place on how to properly transition civilians who lived in the camps for a long time and who lost everything back to society. He further complained that there wasn't even a program in place to assist the civilians rebuild their lives, having lost everything while they were in the IDP camps. There were no discussions from the government about reparations to civilians or even just rebuilding the region. An expert witness, Mr. Adam Branch, a director of the Center of African Studies at the University of Cambridge, as well as a lecturer of African politics in the same university, testified about his research in Northern Uganda and his report called Narratives of Conflict, Climate and Development, Re-envisioning Sustainability from Post-War Northern Uganda. He explained how he researched and collected data for his report. He further discussed his experience in Northern Uganda and what exactly he saw while he was there. Regarding his research and data collection in Northern Uganda around February till June 2003, Mr. Branch said he used ethnographic approach. This approach includes participants' observations, which means spending time in the IDP camps observing the participants, having informal interviews and discussions, as well as long-term engagement with groups. He also had formal interviews with public officials. Mr. Branch explained that he was also able to get into the IDP camps through human rights organizations in Gulu, and that is how he was able to meet participants and was able to observe and collect data for his report. When asked to discuss in detail whether there were any significant benefits both politically and economically, of the war in northern Uganda, Mr. Branch said.
So there's been a significant debate for a long time over whether or not the war was serving the ends of the Ugandan government or sections of the Ugandan military. There were accusations made that the government was profiting from the war economically, yes, in a couple of ways. One way is at the local level, in terms of the kind of petty corruption that was enabled by the war, the way that the war enabled some looting of natural resources, some efforts at grabbing land, and the ghost soldiers sort of scandal, I think, really revealed to a wider public the ways that certain economic interests had become incorporated into the war. I'd refer to Andrew Mwenda's piece in the Tim Allen book, LRA, Myth and Reality, for a extensive discussion of that. So on the economic, in terms of the economic, on the local level, or let's say the sort of small scale level, you had those. On the broader level, many people argued that the Ugandan government was using the war in the north as a way of maintaining high levels of military spending, of diverting some of its budget to, or diverting a significant amount of its budget to the military. And then, again, drawing on Mwenda's analysis, that the government would either use this funding that had gone to the military for its own political ends, or else it would then use some of that military capacity, not so much in northern Uganda, but in other areas, so South Sudan, DRC. So on the economic, I think we can identify the way that the argument has gone, both as kind of small scale and then large scale. In terms of the politics, this is an area that is much more contentious and has, again, been subject to debate since the very beginning of the violence in northern Uganda in 1986.
The final witness during this evidentiary block was Dominic Ongwen's escort, witness D26P0068, who testified about his abduction and life in the LRA. Regarding life in the LRA, the witness said that he stayed in the sick bay under Commander Saidi until the group moved to Jebelin, Sudan, where he underwent military training. He further said that he was Ongwen's escort and his duty was to ensure security of Ongwen and his wives. He continued with his escort duties until 2003, when Ongwen was shot in the thigh and was taken to sick bay. When asked who took over Ongwen's duties, the witness said it was his deputy. About the attack in Pajule IDP camp, the witness said he was present during the attack in 2003 and that it was led by Commander Bogi from Control Alta, but it was Joseph Kony that ordered it.
Now, during this attack, where was Dominic Ongwen?
He was in sick bay.
Now, just so we're clear, why was he in sick bay?
Because he had sustained an injury.
Was this the same injury you mentioned earlier?
Yes, indeed.
What was, at the time of this attack, Mr. Ongwen's office.
During this attack, based on my recollection, he did not have any functions or any role. He was in sick bay at the time. But there were rumors. There were rumors going around that he wanted to cross over. He wanted to go to the Ugandan government. So Kony punished him and completely demoted him. He became a private as a regular foot soldier. And at the time, he did not have any particular function.
The witness confirmed that he had heard about attacks in Abok, Lukodi, and Odek. Eventually, he escaped the LRA and was taken for treatment because he sustained injuries while in the LRA. The trial will resume on 24th of June 2019 with the testimony of the 35th defense witness.